if I had told you just 5 years ago, in 5 years from now, Jews will not be allowed to walk around campuses freely. Shuls, synagogues will be vandalized. Jewish businesses will be boycotted. Jews will be harassed and assaulted and murdered on the streets, lit on fire on the streets of the United States of America. You would have said to me, dude, whatever it is you're smoking, stop smoking it. That's what you would have, and here we are.
All right, folks, Yishai Fleisher here. What's the situation in Israel? Is it good or is it bad? It's a little tricky to know. A lot of people have been killed, murdered in this war. Rockets hitting communities, the north, Beit Shemesh, Arad, a lot of hits. People have been killed. Soldiers have been killed in the north in fighting. So on the one hand, there's a lot of pain. And on the other hand, if you look at the stock market, if you look at technology, if you look at a lot of things, the hospitals, you see there's a lot of growth. And so it's hard to understand which one is it, good or bad? Are we in a good time or a bad time? Somebody told me that the reason that Jewish history is written by prophets is because prophets give us a sense of what's really going on. What's the main flow? What's the river? What's the real narrative? How is God looking at these things? It's hard to know. But one person who has been out there and speaking to us with such clarity and such broad strokes, such ability to reach so many people is Hillel Fuld. Hillel Fuld has given us the good and the bad and the ugly and the beautiful. He's originally a tech journalist, startup advisor, global speaker known for helping companies grow, for telling Israel's story and Israel's innovation to the world. He was recognized by Forbes magazine, named one of the most influential voices online, has worked with Google, Microsoft, etc. But since October 7th, he has shifted his focus from business to advocacy, dedicating himself to defending Israel online, reaching billions through his content in various channels. Today, he continues to speak around the world about innovation, entrepreneurship, and the challenges facing Israel and even the globe. Hillel Fuld, what an honor it is to have you with us today.
That was a very long bio. We have to add, you taught me everything I know.
Let's not exaggerate, but it is really an honor to have you, honestly. And before I even go on, I just want to show one thing. This is a picture of your kid's car that you just sent me right before the show. Is that correct? Your kid's car?
Yeah, that's correct. They were not in it, thank God. It was at a parking lot in Eshtal. We live in Beit Shemesh, so it was right next to Beit Shemesh in a parking lot. And when we went to pick it up today, we were told, yeah, you're not picking up that car. So now I just, I applied for some compensation from the state of Israel, which I've never done before, but I'm told they're very good with it, and we'll see what happens.
What happened? Your kids were drunk driving? What's the deal?
No, it was in a lot there. It was a long story, but it was towed, and it was a direct hit. It was in Eshtal. It was direct hit, and we could have gotten it on Friday, but we're like, yeah, we'll just get it on Sunday. And then, of course, Shabbat, a ballistic missile falls right there, and the whole lot. I mean, 70 cars, completely total loss.
Wow. Hillel, speaking of rockets, so I live here in Gush Etzion in south of Jerusalem in Judea, and we have from time to time sirens. We from time to time go down to the bomb shelter. But the other day I went down to Petach Tikva, and every half an hour we went down to the bomb shelter, and then the third time that I went down to the bomb shelter within an hour and a half, the explosions were right overhead, almost knocked me off my feet. I'm like, oh my God, they are living a very different reality in the so-called center of the country. So like people really feel they have a different experience. What's your experience? What's your sense?
First of all, I think it's important to be accurate. Let's not call them rockets. They're not rockets. They're ballistic missiles. There's a very big difference. Rockets are like, they take the water pipes and they use them for like a DIY kind of thing. That maybe it will hit and have a ballistic missiles are a different ball game. And so when Iran's attacking Israel, we're talking about ballistic missiles that, it's worth repeating that our aerial defense systems, the Arrow specifically, detonates and intercepts these ballistic missiles outside of Earth's atmosphere. Like, we hear these stories and we're like, oh yeah, sure. Iron Dome just detonated a rocket or a missile. We're like, cool, what's for lunch? Do you understand that we just fired a bullet at a bullet and took it out of the sky? Like, God is splitting the sea before our eyes every single day. And we're like, yeah, it was for dinner. Like, dude, stop for 1 second, because none of this makes any sense. And yeah, you mentioned people killed in the Merkaz and all kinds of other places. Obviously every single life is a world, and no one has to teach me about loss of life. That being said, we have to put it in perspective. I mean, again, 30 killed, whatever the number is, it's terrible. But also, this is a war, and war sucks. And we're talking about 30 people killed. On the other side, there's literally thousands of people killed. The entire leadership, the entire replacement leadership, the entire, nuclear scientists, they're all gone. So, I want to repeat, every single life on our side that's lost, and innocent life in general, is terrible, but it also has to be put in the context of war. And in that context, they haven't even moved the needle at all on our end. So, it's that cognitive dissonance, by the way, that I feel like we all have and we all live with constantly. And, I'm sure we'll get into it. We can get into it. I just want to raise this one point, and that is my late brother, Ari Fuld, who you were super close with. How do we feel about losing my brother to terror? Of course, terrible sadness, terrible tragedy, but also he's a national hero of the state of Israel, like tremendous pride. But how do those two things coexist? That's the nature of living in Israel. We have this constant conflict of how to feel. And this is no different. We're kicking some serious tuchus in this war, but also people are in the bomb shelters a lot, and people are, God forbid, are dying. And hopefully that will be the end of it. No more people will be dying, but context is important.
Speaking of Ari Fuld, I just want you to know that I can't show it right now, but when I had a surgery about a year and a half ago, and one of my friends, Oziel, came and brought me a painting of Ari Fuld, him blowing the shofar, and it's just hanging on my wall right over here. It's just part of my life. So thank you very much for mentioning that. Of course, that was your brother. You guys are a heroic family, heroic parents to raise such a heroic family. So really, actually, you kind of presaged already the question that I wanted to ask you, but your take on the big picture, the big picture. Yeah. Israel, are we doing well? Are we not doing? And I'm going to throw in a few things to add to that question. What about our standing in the international community? What about the new woke right and anti-Israelism now on the right as well as on the left in places like the United States? What about the broader war with energy, with China? Where is Trump really going? So how are we really feeling? Oh, checked it out. There it goes. There's one of my alarms, and I hope that it does not materialize into an actual siren. But in any case, give me your take on the big picture, and included in that is what we're going to get into next, which is Israel's high-tech sector and military sector. So what's your big picture take on where Israel's standing in this war?
So I'll be honest with you. For the first, let's say, year and a half of this war, I was banging my head against the wall every day. Like, how does the world not see the truth? How is this happening? But then it occurred to me, like, what are you doing, man? You wear a yarmulke on your head, right? You know how this ends. This isn't our first rodeo. We've been down this road before. What people talk about genocide in Gaza, right? We'll get into it, but like, you know what Purim was? We celebrate Purim as the happiest day of the year for us. Like, what was Purim? Like, literally put yourself for 1 second in the days of Purim. It was the near genocide of the Jewish people. The leader of the world agreed to annihilate us. We were done, finished, done. We had no choice. We had no chance of surviving. What was Hanukkah? It was a war we were not going to win. We were done. What is Pesach? We're about to celebrate Pesach. What was Pesach? It was 210 years of backbreaking slavery and the world's leading empire running after us to murder us and to shecht and to butcher us. And today we celebrate. So, if you're asking me the big picture is this is just a script that keeps repeating itself, and we know how it ends. So that's on a theological level, okay? But if I'm going to put my yarmulke aside for 1 second and talk, let's geopolitics, things like that, first of all, it's hard to disconnect those two things because obviously God is my identity. But I do think that it's very hard because some of the things that are happening geopolitically make no sense. Like the most obvious one is after October 7th, the Jews should have had, resounding support across the board from everyone, let alone not even forget more anti-Semitism. They should have been out. They should have loved us more, not hated us more. That doesn't make any sense, right? But if you want to look at the latest events, I got to say that every year when we say the famous tefillah prayer at the Seder, V'hisha amdal avosenu velanu, this is what stood for us and our forefathers and us. Shelo echad bilvad amad alenu lechalosenu, that it was never one who stood against us. Ela omdim alenu lechalosenu. That's a strange thing to say if you think about it. I every year I'm like, wait, there's a miracle that shelo echad bilvad. It's a good thing that more people hated us. How is that a good thing? And my father always says every year, the miracle is that we always have two enemies or more, that instead of uniting to destroy us, they fight each other.
Wow.
And I got to tell you, like, I never witnessed that until now, right? You see Iran throwing a literal tantrum And you couldn't make this stuff up. Like literally, if a month ago you told me that we'd be fighting a war alongside Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and Iraq, I would have said to you, you bumped your head. And here we are. So you can't really disconnect God and what's happening. That being said, if we're going to go a little bit deep in terms of geopolitics, I think it's pretty much, agreed upon by everyone that President Donald Trump is the best friend we've ever had in the White House. There's no question about that. But I have a little bit of a different perspective on that relationship. And I want to give a disclaimer before I explain my view on this. And that is that, I grew up in the United States. My grandfather came from Germany before the Holocaust. It gave us, my family refuge. Like I have tremendous gratitude to the United States of America. Like that's just stands alone as a statement that's important to mention. But if I had to characterize the relationship between Israel and America, again, on the grand scale of things, my analogy is to an abusive relationship. When you're in an abusive relationship, the husband's nice sometimes to the wife, right? Sometimes he beats her half to death, right? But sometimes he's nice. And, it's how do we get out of this? But it's, now he's being so nice to me. This is what we have with the United States of America. Right now, the husband's being very nice to us in the White House. He's our best friend, right? Yesterday with Biden, we know, and Obama, right? We were battered, we were beaten half to death, right? But I got to say something else. And this is not a very popular opinion, and it hurts me to say it. And that is that while Donald Trump has been incredible for us, all it takes is really one thing that Bibi stands in his way, and the most obvious one is this so-called deal that he's talking about. If he signs this deal with Iran, I would imagine part of the deal, he would tell Iran, we're going to stop, attacking, as will Israel. And then he's going to come to Bibi and say, stop attacking. Bibi's going to say, absolutely not. And we know how that ends because Trump is Trump. Now, I hope that doesn't happen, but it's not so far-fetched to imagine us, quote unquote, breaking up, even now with our best friend in the White House. Now,
just to add a factoid to what you just said, the news has been reporting an unpleasant conversation between J.D. Vance and Prime Minister Netanyahu. J.D. Vance kind of putting forth the idea that Netanyahu did not prepare the Trump administration for how hard regime change was going to be. This is what has been reported, that J.D. Vance accused, and we know that J.D. Vance is kind of on the other side of this war. He's against us, and he kind of accused Netanyahu of putting on rosy glasses and selling that this war was going to be easier. And that's the kind of latest conversation. So you're exactly right that it's like one step away from a J.D. Vance perspective on this war.
That's right. But I have to say, with reports like that, did you ever stop and ask yourself who gave the media that information?
Right.
Like if J.D. Vance and Netanyahu are having a one-on-one conversation, one of them had to leak that.
Right.
Neither one of them would have wanted to leak that. So I take those things with a grain of salt. I don't really understand.
I agree with you. I agree with you, especially from the Trump administration, which is constantly sending ambiguous, tactical ambiguity out there. So I agree with that. Okay.
So
but
I
your
think
point still stands, which is like it could turn.
Right. And, again, I don't obviously want to be wrong about this, but the bottom line is, again, in the grand scheme of things, if we take a, zoom out, we have to break up. We have to get out of this abusive relationship. We have to not be dependent on a foreign government because we know how that ends. Now, again, I want to say it 1,000 times over and over again. They are our friends. They are our allies. We're not breaking up and like never talking to, like, we're going to stay friends, like a breakup, but we're going to stay friends. It's, it's not a question of, oh, we hate you. It's a question of we cannot be dependent on a foreign government. And by the way, the funny thing is, I feel like that's where we and the anti-Semites agree. Like they're like, stop the foreign aid. I'm like, okay, stop the foreign aid. But let's not be naive. Every time we fire an Iron Dome missile to knock a ballistic missile or a rocket out of the air, that's $100,000 right there. And we've fired thousands, tens of thousands. So these are billions of dollars. And yeah, we depend on foreign aid, but we're seeing us moving towards independence, whether it's, military tech deals that we're signing with other countries and many other things going on. So I think that Netanyahu has alluded to it a few times that he also wants to get to the point of independence. To me, winning this war is our top priority. But after that, our top priority should be to break up and become independent.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And one of the ways to become independent is to become a stronger economic power. I always say that really Israel needs to be a power in three different departments: military, economic, and spiritual. And all those are really sources of pillars of power and pillars of projecting power. The spiritual one is one that is uniquely ours to project to the world. One of the ways that Israel is becoming an economic power is through the high-tech sector, something that you've been covering for years. And if Dan Senior wrote the book Startup Nation, you brought it to life for so many people. I get an email once a month by somebody, the folks at Very Good News Israel. And I just got one of the emails, and I started plucking out some of the stuff that's happening right now. And I wanted to discuss with you just very quickly, one after the other, a few of these, see what you think about them. So right here we have a new technology in which bacteria is going to be produced inside the body. Basically, the folks in the Technion have created a way in which little needles, micro needles, will start. You kind of put in the needle into the body, and then the body itself is stronger, better, more ready to produce proteins and medicines inside the body. What do you think about this thing?
I think, we have to take a step back here, because this is obviously incredible technology, but it's you're mentioning an example, which is important, but we have to understand, and I mean this, literally, sometimes people have a problem when I say this, but I think that what's happening as far as innovation in this country is nothing short of biblical. Like literally nothing short of biblical. And, I'll remind you and your viewers that this is a country smaller than New Jersey in the worst neighborhood on earth, right? The most unstable region on planet Earth. We have every excuse in the book to just survive, just exist. Forget change the world. We just have to survive. And yet, across all sectors of technology, that's an important point, because traditionally Israel is very strong at cyber or at semiconductors. Now it's across the board. You cannot find a sector of technology in which Israel doesn't lead the way. And when I say lead the way, it doesn't mean we're number one always, but number two, number three, whatever it may be, but we're leading the world. And it's incredible to see. But again, what do we learn in the story of Egypt? The Torah says something that is, I don't know if you've ever thought about it, is the most counterintuitive thing in the world. And this isn't like Rashi in the commentary. This is literally the Torah. The Old Testament says, I'll say it in Hebrew, then I'll translate. The more the Egyptians persecuted the Israelites, they flourished and they multiplied. That doesn't make any sense. The more they're persecuting us, the stronger we get? That doesn't. Well, the answer is that's our story. And it's our story not in an abstract way. It's a story that is backed by data. And if you look at the data, real data, at the correlation between terror when they attack us and innovation, you'll see that there's a direct correlation. Wow. The more they terrorize us, the more we innovate in a very real way. And this war is the perfect example. People don't realize this. Like, we're fighting an existential war on 7 fronts. Again, we'd have every excuse in the book to just shut it all down. Israel's not only delivering, we're over-delivering. We broke records. The most M&A in large strategic rounds of financing during the war. We broke funding and M&A, sorry. We Google's biggest acquisition in its history, $32 billion of Wiz. Apple made another acquisition of an Israeli company. It's the same founders who founded PrimeSense, which now is Face ID on your phone. People don't realize this. That's also Israeli technology. So during the war, as we fight this existential war, the Israeli tech ecosystem continues to deliver and over-deliver, which is the most insane, counterintuitive, biblical, miraculous thing, that could happen. If you think about it, you stop to actually analyze it, it makes no sense whatsoever.
It is amazing. And even communities that have been affected by terrorism are innovating. Check out this. Now they're talking about putting in a new university and a new airport in Kiryat Shmona, which is a town in the north of Israel that has lost like 60% of its citizenry, of its residents. They just left. And now, in order to rehabilitate this town, so the government is meeting all the time. I actually know the guy who used to be the mayor of Kiryat Arba. Now he's in charge of rehabilitating the north and especially Kiryat Shmona. So they're talking about doing all kinds of stuff in order to make this town flourish again. I bet that it's going to come back stronger. What do you say about the north of Israel?
100%. I don't have any doubts whatsoever. Listen, again, it's difficult what they're living through, no question. But the resilience of the Jewish people is unparalleled in the world, right? Again, you see this, by the way, not only in the military and the war and everything like that, but you see it in even in entrepreneurship, right? It's a very interesting thing that not many people speak about. But in most ecosystems in the world, if you fail, you failed. You're done. You failed. You started something, you failed, you're done. Go get a job. Like that's, I'm not saying there aren't people who don't have another startup, but generally speaking, failure is frowned upon in most places. Right. In Israel, it's like, oh, you failed 3 times? Wow, you must be a rock star. Like, really? We encourage this. Yeah, because that is the right way to look at this, because when you fail, you learn lessons. If you implement those lessons, then it's not a failure, right? So in Israel, everyone has like, I had this startup and this failed, that failed, and all of a sudden, and I know 100 people like that went through startups and failed and failed and failed, and then they finally ended up succeeding big time. So, it's a very, very Israeli level of resilience that we don't really see. I don't think we see anywhere else.
I'm just going to bring one more of these stories, and this time it's something completely different. Here we have a story of sea turtles, a sea turtle rescue center. I mean, you were saying before, like you think that right now would not be the time to deal with other things, and certainly not rescuing sea turtles. So there's a new complex that's opening up, the world's only breeding group with guided tours that will showcase researchers' efforts to stave off animals' extinction. And this guy who Yaniv Levy he had all kinds of issues. He bumped into this. He happened upon a large sea turtle called the loggerhead, whose limb was injured, and he named the loggerhead Mazal and rehabbed it, and then he set up a temporary turtle treatment center. And now, 30 million shekel later, this is now going to be opening up next month during the war, a national sea turtle rescue center. So that's certainly an example of what you were talking about.
Yeah, I think, it's very, very interesting because, I'm kind of like, formerly the tech guy. Now I'm in, this Israel stuff. And to see people in the tech world who are some of the most brilliant entrepreneurs and investors in the world, objectively, like Paul Graham. Okay. Paul Graham started Y Combinator, which is the accelerator that gave birth to Airbnb, for example, right?
Wow.
I mean, Paul Graham I think it's a consensus that he's in the top 5 investors in the world. He is a flaming anti-Semite. He doesn't even hide it anymore. Like, you read his tweets, you want to throw up. He doesn't even hide it. Okay. So and he's investing in Israel. He knows that Israeli entrepreneurs are kicking butt. And then in his next breath, he's like, yeah, but you're murdering and raping Palestinian women. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, you think we're the same people saving turtles, and like, we're the most moral nation in the history of the world. And you see that across the board. It doesn't matter what you want to look at. You want to look at cancer research. You want to look at first on scene when there's a natural disaster, whatever you want to look at. Israel leads the way, not only in tech, but in morality. And so, we're saving turtles and we're going into Gaza and raping Palestinian women. Come on. Enough already with the BS.
Okay. And what's the punchline? How does that comport? Explain that to me. Explain to me. This week I covered J.P. Sears, who was a conservative comedian, and he's turned anti-Israel. It's become like a thing now. It's like in vogue. You know what, Hillel? Somebody said something to me recently which hurt me to the core, and that's pretty rare. They said, in America, Israel has become toxic. And I'm like, what? Those words, Israel and toxic. Israel is a light. Israel is a gift to this world. Explain that to me, and explain to me how I, as a content creator and folks that are watching, how are we supposed to deal with this? Is this supposed to depress us sometimes, or is it supposed, what's the proper reaction to this global anti-Semitic scourge at the very moment where the revelation of the ingathering of the exiles and the rebuilding of the Jewish people in the land of Israel, like, how does that comport? How do we deal with that internal conflict?
So I'll repeat what I said before, because it really is true. In the first half of this war, I found myself super frustrated, super angry, until I realized, hello, what are you doing? Clearly God's running the show, because this makes no sense, right? And so first and foremost, I'm not worried. Like, I'm genuinely not worried, because everything that's going on, these are all miracles. By the way, not only in a positive way, but bad things that are happening also make no sense. So, clearly God's pulling the strings here, and I have no fear and no anxiety about it. That being said, if you want to analyze the root of anti-Semitism, putting aside theology, putting aside Judaism, and we know that in Judaism, Esav Son Yaakov, they'll always hate us. Putting that aside, if you do look for a rational explanation, first let's rule out what it's not, okay? Because people say, oh, they hate you because you're successful. Well, they hated us when we weren't successful. Yeah, they hate you because you're white colonialists, but they hated us in the Holocaust when we weren't white enough. They hate you because of your state, but they hated us when we were stateless, right? So you can't say it's because of this, or it's not. Okay, that's number one. That's important to get out of the way. But if I had to try to rationalize it, this is a topic, a question that I had my entire life. I struggled with it. Why do they hate us? We're amazing. We've made these people's lives significantly better. Why do they hate us? And a friend of mine recently told me something that really resonated with me. Wonder if you're going to enjoy it or like this or not, but I liked it. He said, if you look at history, you look throughout, all the different empires. It's the same script. So here's the script. You have an empire that grows and grows and grows until it reaches world domination, unprecedented and unparalleled power. The first thing that it does is it throws morality out the window, right? It puts people to fight to the death in the Colosseum for the entertainment of the emperor, and it gets rid of gender, right? It throws morality out the window. The first thing that it does after it doesn't want morality is it needs to go after the source of morality. Now, this isn't a I'm better than anyone else thing. This is a fact. In ancient times, it was not immoral to murder. So how does the world know it's immoral to murder? From the Bible. So the Bible was a source of morality in the world. So they say, okay, we don't want this morality shoved down our throats. We're going to have to go after FedEx, the messenger of that morality, and we don't get our package. We don't want that package. Get that morality out of my face, you Jews. I don't want your, thou shalt not murder, I don't want it. Stay away. And then they come after us because we are the messengers. But on the flip side of things, I think a very strange phenomenon, which I'm sure you've asked yourself, maybe you have an answer to this, is why is there a direct correlation between assimilation and anti-Semitism? You would think the more we are like them, the more they like us. The more we assimilate, the less they hate us. That's just psychology, right? But the answer is it's exactly the opposite. The more we assimilate, the more anti-Semitism. I mean, assimilation in Germany was through the roof, right? How does that make any sense? So the same person told me the other side of the coin, which is as follows, and I really enjoyed this analogy. He said, the nations of the world are ships. They're navigating the sea, and we're the lighthouse. Without the lighthouse, they don't know where the hell they're going. And we're like, yeah, we're going to put out our light. We'll be just like you. And they're like, no. Get your light back on. Because without a light, we're lost. Put your light back on. And we're like, no, we're just like you. And they're like, you're not just like us. We developed a tool to show you that you're not like us. And that's called anti-Semitism. And that's when anti-Semitism goes through the roof. And the next stage, which hasn't happened yet, and unfortunately it's, again, in history keeps repeating itself over and over, so it's going to happen now, is that empire falls. As soon as the morality's out the window and it comes after the Jews, that empire falls. And the last thing I want to see is the West falling, but I mean, again, it's not that far-fetched to imagine radical Islam taking over, as it is already taking over, and the West falling. And that's the next stage, unfortunately. But that's how I understand anti-Semitism.
There are two elements. Those are very interesting. That's a very interesting analysis, and kudos to your friend. There are two elements today that are enslavers. If it's the CCP and radical secularism, communism that wants to control the world through technology, or jihadism, which wants to kind of enslave the world and put a hijab on all of us, metaphorically. These are two forces that are very powerful. And when you talk about the West, I think what we're talking about is the forces of liberty, want to give mankind liberty. But I see that the America side of things is holding on, but it's not like all, united in a war for liberty for the globe. They think, they want to shrink America. America first is just another way of saying, I don't want to get involved in things and let the world go to hell in a handbasket.
100%. It's crazy to watch. You see these things and we're like, is this really happening? This doesn't make any sense. How are these people, on the streets of the United States of America openly supporting bin Laden? Like, they have to take a double, like, did that really happen? Did I see that? Did I imagine? Was that a dream? Like, this stuff on a daily basis, it's completely bonkers. And everything that's happening, it seems to me that we're headed on a trajectory unfortunately, for the West. And when I say the West, by the way, to be clear, Canada's already fallen. The UK's already fallen. Paris has fallen. When I say the West, I'm talking about the United States of America. And unfortunately, as we know, if I had told you, this is the crazy part, right? If I had told you just 5 years ago, in 5 years from now, Jews will not be allowed to walk around campuses freely. Shuls, synagogues will be vandalized. Jewish businesses will be boycotted. Jews will be harassed and assaulted and murdered on the streets, lit on fire on the streets of the United States of America.
Ambulances
You would
burned.
have said to me, right, exactly. You would have said to me, dude, whatever it is you're smoking, stop smoking it. That's what you would have. And here we are. And yet, we didn't get into this. I don't know if you want to get into this, but yet, I speak to my friends in Teaneck and in Woodmere and in everywhere, and they're like, yeah, it's okay. It's not going to happen here. What do you mean it's not? It's happening here. What do you mean it's not going to happen here? What? Here's the crazy part it's like sometimes I feel like, what? Am I the only person with my eyes open? How does everyone else not see this? You cannot name, I challenge you, okay? I challenge you to name one thing that happened before the Holocaust, that led up to the Holocaust, that hasn't happened today. Let me just qualify that question. I'm not talking about once it was institutionalized. Once there were laws and institutionalized against Jews, that's already a Holocaust. What led up to that? If you look at everything that led up to that, not a single thing that led up to it has not happened today. They've all happened, every single one of them. And so the way I see it, and again, this is a much broader conversation, but everyone is very familiar with the analogy or the story, parable, I guess, of the man who gets on the roof in the storm, and the water's approaching, and he says, God will save me up here. And they send him in a helicopter. Get in the helicopter. God will save me. They send him a boat. Get in the boat. God will save me. And then he drowns. He goes up to God. He says, God, I don't understand. I believed in you. Why didn't you save me? God says, I did save you. You didn't get on the boat. You didn't get on the helicopter, right? After 120 years, our friends and family in the United States of America and in the diaspora in general are going to go up to God one day. And Mashiach should come today, Mirz Hashem. But if Mashiach doesn't come today, they're going to go up to God one day and say, God, I don't understand. We davened for the ingathering of the exiles for thousands of years. Why didn't you bring us home? God's going to say, what? I didn't bring you home. I sent you elal.com. I sent you Nefesh B'Nefesh. I made Israel paradise. You didn't. I sent you Mamdani. You didn't listen. You get on the freaking plane. What do you want from me? That is. So I speak to my friends and I'm like, how is your head? Like, it's a question that I had answered that I struggle with my whole life, which is, why didn't the German Jews leave? How did they not see what was happening? And I never had an answer until now, because the writing isn't on the wall. It's all over the wall. The wall's covered. And these people are like, yeah, it's not going to happen here. It's insanity, pure insanity.
Well, there were a lot of German Jews that did leave, and there are American Jews that are coming. And actually, there was another story that showed. Here's the story: is that the demand for Jerusalem homes of luxury, ultra luxury, is flying. And I know my Syrian friends are trying to, Syrian Jewish friends are trying to buy apartments in Jerusalem and develop them. So there is an awakening, but you're certainly right that it's surprising that there's not bigger one. What I say to people all the time is, I just say to them, buy an apartment in Israel. Get that place. Get that place. It doesn't have to be in Jerusalem in the luxury place. Get it somewhere else. Get yourself a place. Get yourself a safe harbor economically as well. It's good for your money. It's good for your body. It's good for your kids. It's good for you. Just get that place. Today, I have like lowered the bar. I'm like, you don't have to make aliyah, but have a place already in the land. Like, be smart. Be a little bit smart. Yeah. Obviously, things are... obviously there's a Mamdani. Obviously the campuses are against Israel. Obviously the New York Times is against Israel. Like, wake up and smell the coffee.
So Michael Eisenberg, I'm sure you know Michael,
sure.
One of the top investors in Israel, always tells me the story that when he was a kid in Riverdale, my dad said to him, you can own a piece of the rock. You can actually buy it. And he said, that was such a core component, such a big push for me when I made Aliyah, is that thing that your father said to me, you could own a piece of the rock when I was a kid. And the truth is, I say to people, okay, you can't come right now. I get it. You have elderly parents, but like, don't kid yourself. I mean, as our friend Rabbi Ephraim Goldberg famously said, and I love this analogy, he said, American Jews are on a business trip. When you're on a business trip, you get a nice car, you get a nice hotel, but you're on a business trip. You're going home. Like, don't kid yourself. And so, yeah, in Boca Raton and other places, they're still living like the business trip. But he realizes, and by the way, I don't know if you know, he's very strong about Aliyah. He pushes pretty hard. But in general,
Rabbi Ephraim Goldberg celebrates every time somebody makes Aliyah. They make a celebration every summer. Absolutely.
Right. But on the other hand, it's I don't know if you've ever asked yourself this question, but what did the Meraglim tell themselves? Like, these are the 10 of the biggest rabbis.
The spies in the Bible.
Right. The sin of the sign, 10 spies or 12, 10 of them came back and said bad things about Israel. They were the leading rabbis. They were heads of the tribes. What did they tell themselves? And the answer is so obvious. They said to themselves, here I am in the desert. We got clouds of glory. We got food coming from the heavens. We got water coming from stones. We're very religious here. We have a direct line of communication with God. We are very religious here. Going to Israel? Build an economy and an army? I'm going to stay here where my kids are sheltered, so my kids don't go off the derech, my kids don't become secular, God forbid, and that's obviously said with sarcasm. So they said, we'll stay here religious in the desert. And God's like, you don't get it. It's not your job to stay in Lakewood. It's your job to get on a plane, come home. We'll stay religious here. Hello? And what did the Israelites in Egypt tell themselves that 80% stayed back? What was their narrative? The answer is, I wasn't there, but I can tell you right now what they told themselves. They said, I was born here in Egypt. My parents were born here. My grandparents are born here. I'm Egyptian. Land of milk and honey. I'm not running away. If I run away, I let them win. I'm going to stay here and lobby, right? This is all the stuff we hear today. It's the same narratives over and over again. We don't learn.
Yeah. I remember when I heard people say, we got to stay in Ukraine and help rebuild the Jewish community in Ukraine. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's over. And the same thing is true now for Australia. It's true for the UK. It's true for Canada. It's true for the US. And it's not only because those communities are falling apart because of anti-Semitism, it's also because God is calling us home to this great destiny, to this great opportunity to build up a Jewish state. The toggle has switched, and the end gathering has begun. It's something so beautiful. Hillel Fuld, you have been really putting it out there amazingly, and so many people, just like your father inspired Michael Eisenberg, you've inspired, I don't know, hundreds of thousands, but billions of people have seen you. You are a kind of tech journalist, startup marketing advisor, global speaker. Forbes called you the man transforming startup nation to scale up nation. But now you've shift gears after October 7th to not consult for business so much, but rather to focus your time on defending Israel and fighting for Israel's rights, fighting anti-Semitism, and also calling the Jewish people back home, or at least letting them hear of the great call of God to bring us back home. Thank you so much for everything you do for all of us. God bless you. Keep up the good work. And thank
Thank
God
you.
only your kids' cars were damaged, but not their bodies. May all the punishments that we're seeing only affect external stuff, and the Jewish people keep marching forward.
Amen. Amen.
God bless you, Hillel Fuld. Thanks so much for being with us.
All right. Take care.
All right, folks. That was Hillel Fuld, the one and only, and you gotta follow him and keep connecting him. He's across the internet at Hills HILZFULD across many platforms. So check him out, folks. Thank you so much for being with me here, and don't forget to support what we do at buymeacoffee.com/Yishai. That's the way to support the show. But if you want to keep building Israel, then go to buildisrael.com. Buildisrael.com. You're a builder of Israel, and we are building Israel together with Hashem, with God above. God bless you, folks, wherever you are. Stay tuned, stay strong, stay connected, stay part of the story. Feel that strength pulsating through you. Don't let the bad guys bring you down. When you feel the bad guys, let that energize you, because I'm Yisrael Chai, and we're going to get through this dark time as well. God bless you wherever you are, from the heartland of the Holy Land, and shalom.